Hello, WVLP listeners. This is 103.1 FM in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana, the Vale of Paradise. And you are listening to Tune In, radio for your mind, body, and soul. And today we are talking about breathing. Let's take a nice deep breath as we move into our wonderful experience today with two amazing guests. I'd like to welcome, first of all, I should introduce myself. Hello, I'm Kealah Parkinson, your host of Tune In. And every day here every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, we talk about mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Is it real? Is it something we can actually accomplish in our day-to-day life? Is it just a bunch of hogwash? Somebody thinks so out there, and that's okay. And maybe just listen a little bit and see, what does breathing have to do? Can you believe we're going to do a whole hour of talk on breathing? We really are. And it's actually going to be very interesting. Don't forget to breathe. Help me welcome Stephen Dynako.
Thank you, Eli. Good to be here.
Thank you. And also Tom Dworniczek.
Thank you, Kiki.
And are we going to leave you Tom or Eli the Restorer today?
Eli.
Eli. Okay, Eli. And you're going to have to explain to us why that is. Can we just take a second for that?
Yes.
Excellent.
So if you're ever on Facebook, like Eli the Restorer, that's my spirit name. My birth name was Tom, but Eli came about 35 years ago, and he's kind of taken over. He's the wise one.
Eli was that old. Awesome.
Yeah, Tom is a knucklehead. Eli's the wise one.
And so, okay, and now that may be anathema to a lot of people, this mindful concept of like, why is there a spirit name? So we're not going to get too much into all of that during this show, but I love the idea, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we're going to move a little bit more into introductions. So since we're talking to you, Tom, tell us a little bit about Tom, Eli, a little bit about your arc. Wendy, all the ones inside there.
Okay. I'm a multiple personality, sort of.
Sort of. And now just say
literally.
like, right, it's not literally, right? There's not because there's not disharmony. There's
right.
not a mental illness around this. There's a conscious choice to use different names to talk about the different archetypes inside of yourself, right?
Right.
I like how you're giggling about it.
Yeah, well, you're on the radio. So I've been a clinical psychotherapist for 38 years, going on 39. And when I got into the work, I was very curious. So I drank all the Kool-Aid that therapists do. And then probably about 10 years into it, working with trauma survivors, I knew something was missing. So I started to get into breathwork, shamanism, meditation, things like that to help my clients and to help myself. So I still love doing it, but I don't do traditional psychotherapy. I mean, I can, working with
You're
trauma.
licensed to do
and
traditional.
I'm licensed in the state to do it. But I also teach meditation, a Jewish meditation that we'll talk about, rebirthing, Leonard Orr's modality. And I'm the guinea pig. I've tried it all, and it works.
See, and I say that whenever I work with clients too as a coach, that, I use all my tools. So, now there's this really weird phrase that I don't love in the space that says, I eat my own dog food. I'm like, gross. Do we have to?
I call them tools in my toolbox.
Tools in my toolbox. All right. That's a good one.
So good to be here.
Good
Kiki.
to be here. Thank you. Very nice. Nice to meet you, Tom and Eli and Wendy and all the others who have come along for the play today. Stephen, tell us a little bit about you. Are you originally from the region?
I'm actually, up until 5 years ago, a lifelong Chicagoan.
Okay.
So
and you
Valparaiso.
actually left the city to come to Indiana.
I did. I like
Brave soul.
the darker skies. I could see more stars here than in Chicago.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is, right? Yeah. Different. Very different. So tell us a little bit more about some of your history and what you do as well, because you guys have a lot of intersection, which I didn't even think about until I was putting your videos on our Facebook page.
Yeah. So let's see. So this shows how long?
Yeah, right?
Just an hour.
Yeah. Try to give you a short version of a long
a few
story.
sentences. I know, right? It's a challenge.
Yeah. So I don't have a spirit name because Stephen's both the knucklehead and the sage. So I do my best to integrate.
Nice.
As far as clinical experience, I worked for a short time as a pastoral counselor. Got my master's degree from Loyola, which is where I actually got my
So did I.
Oh, wow.
my undergraduate in communication, which was my first love. So
Okay.
media. So this is perfect.
Oh.
I'm very at home
This is
in the
cool.
studio here.
Yeah, good. Okay.
So communication. I was a stringer reporter when I was in high school for my local paper.
Cool.
And
That's my first love.
and my path has been a integration of all of these things that I've done through my life. So communications, worked in corporate America for 30 years, which was like a whole, crazy experience that I've now have fast forward have come to a point where for me there was no meaning in business anymore. And as I was becoming more attuned to myself and like my purpose for being here on earth very much became about, well, what can I do to serve the business community? Exactly what we're talking about, mindfulness, right? Bringing mindfulness into places like the business world so that people not only get in tune with their own self and their own greater purpose, but then taking that into the activity of business itself. So
I love that. Yeah, I love that because, so often we compartmentalize, right? Like Tom, he's given us this vision of like compartmentalization with the different personality types. And then he's like, and then they're all part of me, right? Which is the integration. And I love how you're Steven the Sage Knucklehead, right?
Yeah.
That's my new name for you.
Thanks.
Just
I'll
kidding.
put that on my business card.
Right.
You should.
So this concept of being able to integrate, and I think a lot of times in society, here in the region, in all kinds of urban settings, all over the world probably, but especially in the U.S., we do this thing where it's like, okay, we have our spirit self and we have our world self, and then our spirit self doesn't get a lot of interplay, and it seems so backwards to me. How about you guys? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Well, okay, so since we're talking about breathing, this is really important, right? Because breath means wind, which means spirit. So the fact that we're breathing is a spiritual practice, and it's essential for us to breathe as human beings because it's the first thing that if we do without breathing, if we do without oxygen, that's the first thing that will kill you, right? I mean, you can do without water and food for a lot longer, but breathing is like the thing that if you stop breathing, you're dead pretty quickly. So it is that really truly, to me, is the spirit. I mean, the fact that we breathe is the spirit moving through us 24/7 a day.
And, a lot of people who have deathbed experiences, right? Witnessing a loved one pass. A lot of people who work in the caregiver space professionally and have witnessed lots of people pass. And I actually experienced this with my cat. There's a whoosh, there's that, the death rattle, the last breath, whatever. And a lot of times there's also an audible whoosh, of kind of, a lot of people say that's the soul departing, whatever. Maybe that's a little more than we're going to get into on this show, but I just love that idea that that's the wind, the breath of life. And then there's the escape of it when it's over. So it's really good information. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's funny because it's seems so simple, and then and we're here, teaching people how to breathe again because it is so important. And if we're doing it mindfully, like to tie in the mindfulness piece of this, if we do it mindfully, it's a form of self-care and regeneration. So it's my experience.
So I would love to talk to you guys about some breath work that you're each expert in, that you teach other people, because you have some very interesting different types of breath work that you teach people. And then we'll talk about the or stuff later because it's someone else's stuff, we can also teach too. But let's talk about the things that you guys teach. So Tom, let's talk about, actually, you know what? Let's start with HeartMath, because we're talking about this concept of how if we stop the breath, it's one of the first things that can kill us. And what it does actually is it cuts off the oxygen to the brain and the heart, right? And so then the whole system stops, right? This interface system, let's talk matrix, kids, okay? Ready? Let's talk matrix. This interface system, right, stops. I know we've lost some listeners, but we'll get back online, don't worry. So Stephen, talk to us about HeartMath and the HeartMath Institute, where you're certified as an instructor and an expert, and tell us a little bit about your certification and how you teach people. And I've had the pleasure of receiving instruction from both of you, which has been very interesting too.
Sure. And I would say, even before I go into my own specific training in it, is that HeartMath is available as something that anybody can really get certified in. Now, I went through a clinical training for it, so it has that track. But for anybody who's doing like coaching or just a recreational work or just kind of informal practice, you can get HeartMath. The Institute has different types of certification. So just want to put that out there because it's accessible.
Good.
Is really where I'm going with that.
Good.
It's
and
accessible.
then their website is heartmath.org, right?
HeartMath.org. So basically, when people ask me what HeartMath is, I say it's a couple things. Well, it's an institute. So there's a research institute for it that's done all this work around that electromagnetic activity of the heart. And the effect that we can have by mindfully breathing, the positive impact on all of our bodily systems. So it's the institute. It's a practice. So when we talk about HeartMath practice, it's actually the different breathing practices that it's developed, and it's a training program as well. So HeartMath, it's all of those things. Accessible, very easy to do, and the thing that I have come to appreciate about it is that wherever you're at and whatever level of involvement you want to have in doing heart breathing, you can. And what I mean by that is that HeartMath actually has an app that is developed for Android and Apple devices, and
super cool.
So you can actually track this stuff, and you can see your own body coming into coherence through these applications that are available.
Can you just explain what coherence means?
All right. So yes. So thank you. So coherence is, so think of it as if you've ever played a musical instrument like a guitar, you know that all those strings have to be in tune in order for the instrument to be in tune. So this is the analogy I use when I talk about the instrument of one's body, right? So if you look at all of the different systems of your body, your cardiac system, respiratory system, digestive system, etc., coherence basically means that all of the systems in your body are in tune, so that your body as an instrument is in tune. Now, when we're under stress, often, pretty much all the time, the body would not be in tune. So if we're undergoing a major life challenge, if we're under a deadline at work, and if we're just and we can actually put ourselves into stress by thinking ourselves into stress.
Yes.
So if we're doing that kind of stuff, we're actually out of coherence, meaning all of this so people don't feel like they want to eat, right? You got butterflies in the stomach because you're nervous or something like that. And that basically means that your digestive system's not in tune with the rest of you. So what HeartMath, the practice of HeartMath allows you to do is through mindful breathing, bring all of the systems in your body into tune.
And that's where you're measuring, say, your breathing rate, your heart rate, right? What other types of systems does the monitor measure?
Yeah, so basically, your
brain coherence.
It's pretty much it's heart and brain.
Heart and brain.
It's electromagnetic energy of the heart and brain coming into coherence, and essentially that's if you choose to use one of the apps, there's a little clip that goes on your earlobe.
That's right,
and that is measuring the coherence between the heart and the brain. And then you can actually see like a wavelength on the screen. And if you see a nice smooth sine wave, that's basically telling you that you're in coherence. If you were to hook yourself up to the application in a stress state, you see a very jagged line. And then you can then start doing the breathing practices, and you'll see eventually that line becomes nice and smooth over time.
So if you would, I would love to, and I would need to make a caveat here to anyone who's driving. If you're driving, don't participate in this practice. You can still listen to it without trying to participate, but I think it would be great to lead the listeners through a little heart breathing exercise.
Sure. And I'll say for anybody who is driving that you can do this eyes open.
Okay, good.
So if you are driving and you're feeling a little road rage right now, we can actually bring it into coherence from that.
Good.
And this is really
a service for the community.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Kealah, because the thing about HeartMath is it's not meditation.
Right. Okay.
Because meditation is also can be a mindful breathing practice, but the difference with HeartMath is that there's this intention that you can do it in the moment. And you could do it if you're sitting in a meeting. You could do it if you're behind the wheel of a car. You could do it if you're having an argument with your significant other. And the whole idea here is that it's fully present awareness. Whereas meditation, in a way, almost takes you into an altered state, or it can.
That's a good definition. Thank you for that explanation.
So to just introduce everyone to a simple heart breathing practice. Eyes open. I'll just invite everyone to keep eyes open, and if you're driving, keep your eyes on the road, of course. And if you're sitting in the room, I would invite you just to gaze softly at a spot in front of you, and just kind of like have a nice soft focus, like you're looking through the spot, and simply bring attention to your breathing. Notice if you're breathing it shallow or if it's deep. If you're feeling a little stressed, your breathing probably somewhat shallow, but just pay attention to that. Don't judge it, and just become in tune with your breathing rhythm, such as it is. And then as you look at that spot in front of you, start to bring attention, your focus to the middle of your chest, your heart space. And you're almost conceptualizing your heart as a third lung. And imagine, if you will, that your breath is coming in and out through the center of your chest. And what this is doing is it's giving your brain something else to think about other than the rage or the racing thoughts or the projections you're making on others. And instead, you're actually focusing your brain into the center of your chest as if it were breathing. And that's the simple, basic practice, and that's the basis for actually all of the other HeartMath practices. So it's called heart breathing, that you're literally breathing through your heart.
Did you do it, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
How did it feel for you?
Normal.
Normal. This is how Tom breathes all the time.
Pretty normal.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
What I like what you said about it's a way to come back to you, embody yourself, and not be out there chasing parrots and butterflies.
Yeah, and that conceptualization of breathing through the chest, it gives the brain something different to think about, because we don't. I mean, the heart is not a third lung, but if you're thinking about that and you're focusing in the center of the chest, it tends to take the mind away from all of the racing, anxious thoughts that might be going on. Because now you're having to think, oh, what would it be like if I'm breathing through the center of my chest?
And focus there.
Yeah, exactly.
It does calm it all down.
It does. It really harmonizes everything. I had the privilege of that experience of being hooked up to the HeartMath monitor when you were teaching this to our group when I was getting certified in hypnosis.
Yeah.
And it was so wonderful to just see the coherence happen there on the screen, like seeing that. And it was just a simple act, just that great, wonderful, as you said, simple but accessible exercise that you just taught us. It's something I have brought into my morning meditation practice. And I find myself very centered as a mother, getting my kiddos ready for school. This is something that's so simple. I love that you said if you're driving, you can still do this as long as you're just using your eyes open and focusing on the road. Yeah,
right? Exactly. Yeah. And it's a mindful breathing practice in that sense.
It is.
And then the other thing you can layer onto it. So I gave you the very basic kind of heart breathing, heart focus practice. The other thing then you can layer into it is a positive feeling. So that could be like, you love your children, right? And a lot of mothers will go there. Like I've done this. I've done HeartMath training with mothers, and they'll think about like the day they gave birth, and it evokes such a positive feeling that when you layer that into your heart breathing, that's leveling it up, and that's bringing a very positive washing of oxytocin through the body as well. So
right away,
so you can go right back to a positive feeling from either your own life or just in general. Just say, you know what, I want to feel appreciation or care or love, and if you're able to layer that into your heart breathing, that's all the more powerful, and then it quickens that coherence process.
I want to remind listeners you are listening to WVLP LP radio in Valparaiso, Indiana at 103.1 FM. And we are broadcasting to you, also live streaming every day at WVLP.org all around the world. This is a great regional station, and our show, Tune In, is underwritten in part by Unity of Northwest Indiana, creating the premier spiritual center of Northwest Indiana, servicing needs for mind, body, and soul. And someone forgot to mute their computer phone. Okay. Who would that be? It was only the show host.
Kiki.
So, Stephen Dynako, who is, are you still a pastoral counselor?
No,
okay.
I'm not.
Okay.
No.
Who has been a pastoral counselor.
Skills,
okay, and uses his skills, mostly working with the business community now, if I understand correctly, which we're going to hear some more about, was just leading us through a wonderful HeartMath or heart breathing exercise created by the HeartMath. Well, I guess not created by the HeartMath Institute, but really concretized by the HeartMath Institute as a type of metric and a really great, simple mindfulness technique that can be done anywhere, anytime, very accessible, very amazing. And we were talking about how to layer onto that then the loving kindness, right? And that's so my morning, if I get up early enough and I don't have the interruptions and I have some me time, I have a little meditation space in my office. It's a very small space. I have a very tiny credenza that I have, some singing bowls and smudgings and things like that on. I, put some lights on. I do some sort of blessing, some sort of prayer, maybe some qigong, and then I maybe do some yogic stretches and some deep breathing. And I sit down in my lotus position on my little meditation pillow in front of all of that, and I do heart breathing, and I do it just the way that you did teach us, and with just noticing my breath and then starting to envision that heart as a third lung opening up, feeling that breath going in and out, centering myself. And then a lot of times I will, if I'm really not, because then what I do is I go up to my third eye and I just get some insight. Okay, this is what I need to do to center myself throughout my day and kind of walk my path, and it's very helpful. And I have my goals for the day, and I have my big life things I'm working on, which Tom knows the most about. and then, I'm trying to get some insight into that and get some alignment, stay on my soul path. Maybe that's not where all the listeners are. That's completely okay. Maybe it's just like, how do I get through breakfast without losing my, on my, 6-year-old who pushes all my buttons. I don't know anybody who has that experience, but, and then, I'm just kidding about that. Of course, that's obviously me. So, then the next thing that I do, if I don't go to that right away, if I can't get there, that loving kindness is a bridge for me. And so, either one of you want to tell a little bit more about the loving kindness meditation? That's something that's been around forever.
You can, because I use gratitude when I do it.
Awesome. So let's talk about, Stephen, tell us about loving kindness. Tom, give us the gratitude shortcut right after. Sound good? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So loving kindness, there's a deep basis in Buddhism with that. I'll say that I think it's amazing that it's called loving kindness and not kindness loving, right? Because it's also, so for me, and I wrote a book called The Self-Aware Lover, right? Which is very much about like, what does it mean to be self-aware of oneself as a loving being, and not just romantic love, but in, universally, right? So loving kindness folded into all of this, what we're talking about is HeartMath practice and so forth. I think that's where it starts, right? So there's some little nudge about, well, I want to take care of myself because I love myself, and this is what can bring you gently into accepting something like heart breathing. If you're not, if you're not like interested in meditation, or if somehow you just think it's like maybe it's too woo-woo or skeptical, just think about, well, what do I really care for myself? And that's and so if I have loving kindness towards myself because I want to be a fully effective and powerful human being, if I can start with myself, that's where it has to begin. Because then if I have loving kindness for myself and I can practice that through heart breathing is one way to do it, of many, then I'm able to take that loving kindness into the world and express it towards others. So,
and then I know with the Buddhist practice, there are some mantras that you say, right? And so it's interesting because I've heard usually in the traditional Buddhist practice, it starts with the self. May I be well. May I live in peace. May I be happy. May I be healthy, right? And then you move on to, if you're really practicing a full blown version of the loving kindness meditation, you move on to someone you automatically love, picturing that person, saying the same statements for them, envisioning that for them, then to someone you feel neutral about, then to someone you have a challenge with, then to your community, then, or maybe your household, and then to your community, and then to, on and on and on until you're encompassing the world,
then
right?
all sentient beings.
Yeah, and all sentient beings. So then the universe, right? We're just really taking it out there, which is amazing. Yeah. And what's interesting in my mind, what's something really interesting to note is that I have heard it flipped for Americans. And at a lot of studios that practice this, that we start with someone we love. That's easy to do that. And then we move on to ourselves because it's such a challenge. There's so much shame in American society. It's such a challenge to be okay with loving yourself. It feels not good to start there for a lot of people. So I think that's a really interesting twist. But
yeah, it's not a narcissism. I think that's what I would affirm for people.
Right.
That self-love is not a narcissism.
It's not. But we have to say that, I think, in the U.S.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom, tell us the gratitude hack for this.
So when I sit there and I say what I'm grateful for, and my buddy Greg Braden says, say it out loud. So if you guys aren't doing that, try that because it makes it realer. There's something about keeping it in your head versus out in the universe. And I just come up with 5 or 6 things, and I go slow. I'm grateful that I got up today. I'm grateful that, I have food in my house. Little things. I don't go for the big things. And simple, but that starts my day with that open heart and that feeling of gratefulness. And then, throughout the day, I'll do it if I kind of lose it.
And you know what I think is really interesting? Yeah, and you never lose that, I'm sure. I'm just
Never.
kidding. The knucklehead does, yeah.
Yeah.
I keep calling you Tom, by the way. I'm sorry, you're Eli here, right?
Yeah.
The integration is happening, I think. So, sorry, what were we just talking about? I just made
We were
myself...
just talking about feeling
the feeling,
little
the gratitude,
things.
and the little things. And so the segue I wanted to make with that is that I really feel that if, we had connected him to the HeartMath machine using like the Apple app, right? If we were doing that, then we would see him get into coherence in the same way, because he's using a different technique to tap into the same concept of whole state harmony. Okay, Tom,
Yes.
do you have anything else to add to the conversation so far before we move into a different type of breath work?
No, just say it out loud.
Okay, say it out loud. I love it. Yeah. So that heart breathing was, again, very accessible, very simple, and also very calming, right? And Tom teaches an interesting technique that is not about harmonizing the body. It has a different intention and a whole different type of breathing. So we're not going to ask listeners to do this with us, but I would love for you to tell us about it and demonstrate.
Okay. Were you talking about rebirthing?
I'm talking about the pineal meditation.
Okay, so in the pineal meditation, I'm a Kabbalistic student and teacher. I found a rabbi back in 2004 who changed my life, and we came up with a meditation using the pineal gland, releasing DMT with your breath. So you don't need to inject it.
So tell listeners what DMT is.
Okay, DMT is dimethyltryptamine, and they believe it's in all of our cells, but especially in our pineal gland.
And it's not totally been proven, but there is a lot of research. What's the doctor's name who's been researching
Dr. Rick
that?
Strassman.
Thank you. And so there's still research on that. They're still trying to figure it out. Even if maybe it isn't the chemical, what happens is really completely mirroring to what happens if people externally take the chemical.
Yeah, when he injected it, he gave a 100-question questionnaire, and I've taken it, and I've scored 86 on that without the injection.
And what does that mean?
That you can stimulate your pineal to release dimethyltryptamine and have the same experience his folks were having in New Mexico.
Interesting. Okay, so tell more.
So what we're doing with the breathing, and it's a very Jewish concept, we use a torus, a toroidal field, and we start the breathing from the root chakra up the spine, through the pineal, out the crown, but the 2 tails come back around to the root chakra. And we do that for 20 minutes with the focus on stimulating the pineal gland. Different than Kundalini energy, we're building a furnace by keeping it rotating, because when the DMT kicks in, that's going to be your rocket fuel to leave here and go elsewhere.
So definitely not doing this behind the wheel, right?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
And you lead people through this because the breathing part is very intensive.
Right. It's very rapid. It's very diaphragmatic. And so I'm going to just breathe like I do it when I do the meditation or rebirthing. And if you guys can hear this. Now, you don't have to start with that because people freak out a little bit. I say go slow with this, but I've been doing this a long time. And by rotating that torus with your breath, you're giving your mind something to focus on, whether you can see it or not, but you're stimulating your pineal gland a lot. And that kind of breathing for 20 minutes will bring refreshment to your body, calmness. It's work. It's not the McDonald's quick fix.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and you do this in that state for what, like 20 minutes?
Well, for the pineal, 20 minutes. For rebirthing, I've done it up to 2 hours.
Wow.
On many occasions.
That's amazing. Someone was just telling me about this at a workshop I was giving last night. A yoga practitioner who will join us in a future episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the pineal meditation, we start with the breath because it's free, and then we do. There's like 8 other steps that are very Jewish. I added shape-shifting to it, so we shape-shift a little bit with the universe, with the root, the 3rd chakra, and the 3rd eye. And then we have a sacred chant we do. And then when that's done, the music continues, and you just go wherever you're going to go. Why I like teaching this meditation, and I'm going to put it out there, if you want to live in the now, and this is Joe Bolte Taylor's research, the domain of the now is your right brain. Left brain ain't going to get you there, folks. So you've got to find a modality. So I have 3 I use: rebirthing, pineal meditation, and shamanic journeying. Those 3 modalities have strengthened the heck out of my right brain.
Okay. So this is awesome. I love it. Stephen and I are totally right there with you, and it is probably scaring the heck out of some of our listeners. So what I'm going to do, just for a second with your permission, is bring this back down to human language, right?
Okay.
To people speak. Because I think a lot of people listen to this and they're like, okay, so you're hyperventilating for 20 minutes and then you have some weird delusional dream, right? Okay, sure. Maybe that's part of what's happening, right? Like in our systemic bodies, that's what's happening. And yes, also there's accessing a different type of consciousness. So we're going to talk for just a tiny second about Jung and archetypes and collective consciousness and dream work, because this is kind of the bridge to, what's happening in those moments, right? It feels like we're leaving and going to another place or whatever. And maybe we are kind of leaving, again, this matrix online system and going somewhere else. Maybe we're not going anywhere. Who knows? Because of time. And, if you don't know about time, then just watch Easy Rider. But the concepts, right, are that we are doing something. We're getting into a different state. We're altering our state. If you want to use the term you're hyperventilating and having a delusional experience, cool, that's still an altered state. So I'm just going to give listeners the permission to put it in whatever terms or framework they want to put it in. And also you referenced Kundalini and shamanic healing and things like this. And so I also want to encourage listeners, look up this stuff if you don't know. If we're ever talking about terms you don't know in the show, that's the concept, is to introduce this to you. If you don't feel like going down that rabbit hole and that seems too weird and trippy for you, don't do it, because we're talking about mindfulness as accessible in your everyday life, but you can take it as far as you want to take it. We talked last episode about mindful fails and how it can go wrong. And so it's good to have a guide, someone like Tom or Eli, someone like Stephen, right? The knucklehead sage, and and make sure that you have somebody you trust who can guide you if you feel like you are going to try something different. If you're just doing this with books, I just want to caution you, or doing it with radio shows or YouTube, channels, whatever, then I want to caution you that there may be things that come up, and there are resources like Cheetah House that we mentioned last episode, and places locally here in the region that you can reach out to, especially the experts on this show who talk about this. So there's our caveat. We just want to let people know that. I also want to just take a quick station break to remind listeners, you are listening to WVLP LP Indiana at 103.1 FM here in beautiful Valparaiso, the Vale of Paradise. We stream live everywhere on WVLP.org. This show is Tune In, hosted by myself, Kealah Parkinson, and it is about mindfulness, and it is radio for your mind, body, and soul. The show is underwritten in part by Kiki Productions, Inc., with a mission to help people speak their truth and find their mission to change their own corners of the world everywhere. My underwriting spiels are a little chunky today, so I just want to apologize to listeners that I forgot to write my scripts and bring them for the underwriting. They'll be cleaner next time. Please forgive. So, Mr. Eli the Restorer. I do want to say I'm adding some resources to the Facebook page right now about both of these gentlemen and a lot of the things they're referencing. I already put the link to heartmath.org. I'll be putting other links as well. Mr. Eli gave us a wonderful visual here in the studio that you couldn't all see. That was about how the breath moves around. He was describing the torus and the concept of how the breath moves around and how we kind of envision that while we're doing that breathing, if we're doing the pineal gland breathing. Just like Stephen was helping us picture the heart open up as a lung, in the pineal breath work, we are picturing the flow of the breath in a very specific fashion. And it kind of looks like the horns of a torus, right? That's kind of like a little bit of the, it's a different word, but it's the similar
like the
concept.
Two-tailed snake.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. And I have a different connection in my head, apparently. But I will say there is a visual for that on the Facebook page. So I do have a couple of videos, one talking about one where Stephen is being interviewed by our local friend Kathy Sipple about the HeartMath in general and heart breathing, and also one where Eli is talking about thoughts, and it's from his YouTube channel. And there is a good visual on the video from Eli/Tom with that breath work and what it looks like. And it has the different colors. He also mentioned the chakras. And so I think, Tom, you also have a video that describes that, right, where you really kind of do some visual imagery. Is that right? On your YouTube channel?
Probably.
He has several videos there. So you can go to the YouTube channel, Eli the Restorer. That is already on the Facebook page, and find that out.
And if people are interested in trying this, I do the pineal meditation live once a week. That's how I restore myself. And if you can't do a live with me when I'm doing it, because it's always different times, usually at the end of the week, and I do it at Unity a couple of Saturdays a month, but the replay is always there, so I give a 20-minute explanation about why we're doing all this, and then we do it together. And
nice.
There's a whole reason why we want to do it together.
And so, and the reason is, again, kind of like changing the state of the community, right? I'm kind of in a nutshell.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And there's a whole teaching that my rabbi talks about the pineal gland connecting our pineals to one another, that's what's going to interconnect all of us.
Interesting. So again, I think a lot of listeners are like, oh, that's amazing. And some others are like, what the heck?
Yeah, what's he talking? What's he drinking?
What the heck? Yeah.
Well, that's the same in HeartMath too, because we talk about the electromagnetic energy of the heart. And that it extends beyond the body.
And I want to say something else about HeartMath, and have you say something else about the measurements they've done and the data they put behind this, right? Because again, Dr. Strassman, thank you. Sorry, I don't know why I keep forgetting that. Dr. Strassman is trying to put some data behind this. He's got some studies going on, which is cool. HeartMath has a huge tome of detailed information.
Yeah, it's like 30 years plus of research.
Say more.
Yeah. This is realizing that, we're in this world that evidence-based, is where a lot of people want to see things in order to believe it, that they've intentionally from, 30 years ago or more began research into this. Like how do the brain and the heart come into coherence, and what are the practices that quicken that? And so you can go to heartmath.org, and I believe most, if not all, of the research is freely accessible. And like I said earlier, there are a couple different tracks for certification. So if you're a clinician, there's a lot more technical information that you go through and that you have exposure to when you take it. And then if you're more of a layperson, there's other articles that don't have the same level of technical complexity, but nevertheless have references to the research. So there's a bunch in there, and for sure. Yeah,
I'm just going to say one anecdote, because the first time I heard about HeartMath, it was in a documentary. I have to say I watch a lot of these spiritual documentaries, and I don't always remember which one I got this information from. So if you know, you can let listeners know. But there was a documentary that was talking about this concept that we're all kind of connected, and some of the data that's there to support that now, which both of you guys are getting lots of information on and sharing. And there was one, I think, study that HeartMath did where they were showing images to people. Do you know what I'm talking about? They were showing images. It was peaceful images, and then there would be like a horrible scene, like maybe corpses or something, right? And what they were measuring then the heart rate and the coherence also that was happening, and how that got disjointed when people were seeing, because they were measuring a little bit of empathy, that sort of thing. But what they got from that study was a little data about intuition, because what they found was even people who were watching the beautiful scenes who hadn't been shown one negative image, so they hadn't been anticipating anything, their heart rate started to elevate. I think it was half a second before the image came onto the screen. Everything else in the body system stayed the same. And and I have to say, I very, very vividly remember. So I have an experience in my life where I was assaulted, or attempted assault and a minor assault, by a couple of people who were, trying to go through a gang initiation. Right, I woke up to them like trying to get into my apartment, and I have to say that when I woke up, my heart was beating out of my chest. And there had been random people like ringing my buzzer in the past. And it would just be an annoyance. I would wake up and it would be an annoyance. And I woke up with my heart beating out of my chest. And it was like 2.5 hours of, defending myself. And I was very lucky. I was not physically hurt, really. But my heart was so up. And then the terror of the fight or flight. So I'm getting a little fight or flight talking about it, right? Yeah. Because it's a trauma I still haven't processed. So I have to do my psychodrama or something, right? Just let's do that. right? And that's a huge reset. And I do feel better. Thank you. See, that's why the show is called Don't Forget to Breathe. It sounds like a silly thing, but it's true. We have to be reminded sometimes. So, and I think that Greg, our station manager, actually reminded you guys, don't forget to breathe on here if you're nervous about being on the radio, right? So it's everywhere. This is ubiquitous, right? Yeah. People need to know that. I will say though, just to finish that thought that, that my body went into such fight or flight. I know what terror sweat smells like now. I had to throw those clothes away I was wearing. I washed them twice in a washing machine and they still stunk. Damn. And my body, if anything made me nervous, it was a terror sweat for about a year after that. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to have the worst BO ever? And that's my badge of honor for having gotten through that. But my body regulated again because luckily we live in a society that's pretty civilized and things like that are rare occurrences. And I feel very blessed to live in Northwest Indiana where for the most part, for most of our communities in Northwest Indiana, that's a rarity.
And I think, what you're bringing up is really important because it's like, listen to your body.
Yeah.
Right? Your body knows, listen to the intuition. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't even have to be a traumatic experience. It could be something as simple as you've got to make a decision about, it could be a business decision, mm-hmm. right? And it's like, well, your intuition is telling you to do one thing and then somebody else or quote unquote logic's telling you to do something else, and then really sit with that. I would invite you to do and okay, what's the power of the intuition behind this?
Right.
Because because it knows, it really does.
And let's talk about, again, we've kind of been talking already about how the breath can lead us into that connection with the intuition, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed, I've been doing the pineal meditation since 2006. My intuition has increased dramatically. Mm-hmm. I know things. And I'm paying attention easier.
You just trust yourself, right? You don't have to get this outside opinion on stuff.
Right.
Pretty cool.
I became my own therapist.
I love it. Excuse me. Okay, so Tom, what else do you want to add to this at this point? Do you want to go into breath work with rebirthing?
Well, what I suggest with the pineal gland is don't try it once and not do it again. Try it 6 times. I tell my clients to do 6 AA meetings and then decide.
Okay.
I do the same thing with this because I've never had the same experience, and I've been doing this for a long time, a lot. So every time, there may be similarities, but try it 6 times and then you decide if it's something you want in your life. It heals the emotional body. It's like rebooting my body computer. When I come back in from one of these meditations, I feel different. I feel whole, and I stay healthy doing this. I don't get sick. Knock on wood.
Yeah, that's great. He's a very healthy guy. I often forget your age, your Earth age, whatever, right? Because and then I'll be like, oh, he's actually maybe a little tired right now. I forget that. He's so limber and fit, and he runs around and plays with young kids and teenagers all the time. I think of him as a guy, and I'm sure you're the same, Stephen. I'm sure you're the same. I also have to say they're both wearing ponytails. Can I?
Yeah. The ponytail club.
It's the ponytail club today. I love that.
You could do the same if you tied your hair
I know. I almost had my hair in a ponytail. I should have. I don't know why. I can't believe it's time for another station break already because they're coming about every 15 minutes, and I just feel like that last little block just flew by. But I want to remind listeners again, you are listening to WVLP, Low Power Radio, here at 103.1 FM in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana, broadcasting around the world at WVLP.org. This is Tune In, radio for your mind, body, and soul, where we discuss mindfulness. I am your host, Kealah Parkinson. And this show is underwritten in part by Unity of Northwest Indiana, creating the premier spiritual center for Northwest Indiana with retreats and
labyrinth
walk and nature walk and all kinds of things to come, and potentially maybe a business. You want to say more about that?
Yes, we're Kealah and myself and 6 other people are opening a healing center in Highland, Indiana. It's going to be called the Center for Transformative Growth, where we teach all this and more. And then when the Unity building is built, that will be our second office. We've got 2,000 square feet laid out for us. Are we blessed or what?
Yeah, it's exciting. So, and then tell more just about who the Center for Transformative Growth will be helping.
Everyone.
How. No.
Okay.
We talked about this.
I know. So it's energy medicine. We do a lot of energetic work, Reiki, rebirthing. We're going to be doing yoga nidra. We're going to have a salt cave. And I just found out last night that sitting in a salt cave raises your serotonin and dopamine level.
There's the evidence.
I'm looking for evidence. So we have different people. My twin brother is a addictions counselor. I'm a psychotherapist. We have Kealah that's going to do it, all the wonderful things she does. We have dream interpretation, past life work. All of them are trained pretty much in shamanic healing. So we're going to be working outside the box because I've been doing this a long time. And as far as addiction too, and Kealah and I, we've talked about this, we don't treat the symptom, the addiction. We get to the core issue. That's what I did, and it's allowed me to stay sober almost 32 years without ever relapsing. I got to the root. And part of it was through breath work. A big part.
Yeah. And it's, there are some, it's for people who are working through addiction, health recovery, chemo, trauma, relationships, anxiety, depression. It's offering counseling, psychotherapy, energy medicine, Reiki, shamanic healing, just like you said. Also couples work, hypnosis, and other workshops. And it is really bringing energy medicine to the mental health and addiction space. So there are some great places also who offer some things like that here in Northwest Indiana. And so this is just one that's going to be in Highland and Lake County. And so this show is going to just provide a variety of different opportunities for people to speak about those types of centers, to collaborate together, because I think the more we have in this world doing this, the better, right? Do you have some other resources similar to that, Stephen?
Well, I wanted to make a comment based on what you brought up earlier about, like Tom said he doesn't get sick.
Yeah,
and I have the same experience.
I bet.
And it's very rare that I don't feel well.
Okay.
And I think, what the shift that we are here to help people make is that our natural state is to be healthy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we often are, we experience, and you just have to watch television to see all of like the drug ads, mm-hmm. right? Yes. And you'd think, well, we're born into illness. We're born into this body to be ill, because that's what the media is telling us, right? Really, we're born to thrive. Mm-hmm. And so all of the practices we're talking about here are all about that. And you can achieve that. This is the thing. This is available to everybody because it is our birthright.
Yeah.
We're not born into the human body to become ill. We're actually here to thrive and to contribute. And you can contribute when you're healthy. Mm-hmm. And that's why that's why we feel healthy. And it's not an egotistical thing. It's very intentional. Mm-hmm. Like we intentionally do this because we were saying before we came on air that we're here practicing immortality.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. And now my listeners are like, click. I'm just kidding.
Well, if you want to be immortal too.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
But we're
let's talk about the science, the data behind how does breathing help us to not have sickness. What does breathing do to help us not have sickness? Who wants to answer that first?
Let me just say this. In my Leonard Orr's rebirthing modality, if you keep your energy fields healthy, the hard copy of the body stays healthy. If you're picking up the unhealthy energy in your energy field, the hard copy will eventually get sick.
And belief system is attached to that, of course, right? There are a lot of different facets to this, right?
I'm
like
get
anything.
Cancer,
I know, my goodness,
family.
Right? Yeah. I'm not saying that doesn't mean it's true, right? I'm not saying like, oh, it's all in your head, or of course there's data for all of that as well. What's interesting is when you really start studying, and now we're kind of like delving away from some breathing for now, but that's okay because it's all tied in. What's interesting is when you start studying like the data that pharmaceutical companies have, and I'm not saying that they're the devil, please be sure. I know that they do so much good work. I mean, and not just like in the drugs they make, but a lot of philanthropic work. I mean, it's amazing. This Lilly has a ton of great grants and things that have really helped all kinds of great spiritual places and meditative places and things in Northwest. My home was built by a grant from Lilly after a flood. So, go ahead, Tom. You have something to say.
The pharmaceuticals are treating the hard copy. We're treating the non-hard copy with our energy medicine.
And that's okay, right? So what I want to say is I want to go in and say, like, I don't mishear this, right? I want people to hear that I don't think there's anything out there that's all bad or all good, right? Including any of the work that I do, right? I don't think it's all good. There can be mistakes and things. So, but having qualified that to death, then let me also say that when you study then the data that's there on placebo, right? Mm-hmm. And how we compare the metric is this drug effective based on how does it do versus placebo? Well, the standard for placebo healing by itself is a good 40% minimum. And so most drugs have to work to beat that. They have to be at least 41% effective or 40.5% effective, right? They have to, and we'd like to see like a regular recurrence of it. We'd like to see like it goes a little beyond that, but literally 43% effective can count, right? So let's just talk about the extra percentage that don't get healed from the drug, right? So there's no magic drug that works for everyone. Right. And then let's talk about how all you need is to be told you're having a surgery and wake up with a little incision in your knee and you don't have knee problems anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's amazing, right? And so, I mean, again, going down another rabbit hole for listeners if they're interested, studying sort of that's that belief system. And breathing, let's talk again about how does breathing help to, again, with evidence, oxygenate our bodies, create all of that, create coherence and harmonics and heal the body.
So let's talk about like your own body as the maker of its own medicine. Right, so
all the chemicals are in there.
Yeah, so when you start with breathing, so in the HeartMath practice, and I know with other, and it's not limited to HeartMath, but what we get to is when we're practicing these things, that we're increasing the levels of like DHEA, which is called the happiness hormone, oxytocin and so forth, and we have the ability to affect the production of those good drugs in our bodies by these practices. And we also, and this is the important point, is that we also have the ability to think ourselves into stress, which creates the stress hormones.
Yes, we do.
Right?
I mean, I was just telling that story about 15 minutes ago, and I was experiencing all this trauma in my body, right? And you guys saw that, and Tom reminded me to breathe.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So that's that's the other thing that HeartMath research has proven, right? Is going in and looking at the hormones that occur in states of stress, and then in states once somebody does a HeartMath practice, and this is true in meditation and other mindfulness practices as well. So we actually, our bodies are a factory for these, for our own, chemicals and our own happy drugs to help us heal, and to thrive and to be positive contributors to society.
Everything, to whatever we're doing, right? So washing the dishes, honestly, if that's what we're doing in that moment, right? Because I can wash dishes in all kinds of states. I can wash dishes like distractedly, watching, some TV show or whatever. I can wash dishes running around and, chasing my kids and coming back to them. I can wash dishes angrily because I have so many dishes and who left these dishes here, and I can wash dishes at peace and joy. And I feel like they sparkle more when I do that, right? It's like cooking or whatever, anything, right? So just being aware, having that concept, that's really what mindfulness is in a nutshell, is just being very present, so accessing our right brain. And, since we're speaking of the chemicals, I don't know that we really explained enough. We said what DMT was, with its proper name, but tell more, Tom, Eli, about what DMT
is a natural hallucinogenic that the Creator put in our bodies. Why did that come? And Strassman,
it's found also in other plants.
Yeah, ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca is the big one everyone's hearing about right now. Yeah,
but
which we're not condoning or condemning anything. Right. Let's just say right now.
Yeah. So what Strassman is called DMT is the spirit molecule between this world and other realms. It's the vehicle, and that's what I use it for.
Okay.
I like visiting. And I want to say one thing for you folks listening. In my rebirthing world with Leonard Orr, there's 4 major issues we have that make us feel not whole. And one is our birth trauma. When we were born, we were traumatized. And if you don't heal your birth trauma, breathing healthily is going to be difficult. So you clear that with your breath work.
Does everyone have birth trauma?
Yes, everybody that was born on Earth.
So, okay, now, so like for instance, there's someone in your family who just had a wonderful, beautiful birthing experience. Right. Do you think that baby also has birth trauma?
Yes, there's some form of trauma coming in. Now, she was a wet birth, so that is going to help
in the water.
her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot. But everybody has it. You take your first breath, you feel searing pain because you're breathing on your own, and then you build carbon dioxide in your body, and that stuff will kill you. So that's Leonard Orr's, and I drank.
Do you have do you believe that too, Stephen, or no?
I've heard that before.
You've heard that.
I heard like one of the,
does it resonate for you?
It's that like there's that it's entering into this realm, from the other side.
Yep.
And it is a traumatic experience, even when it's a peaceful experience.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and I have heard people who share near-death experiences, which there's a really interesting website about that if people want to go down that particular rabbit hole, NDERF.org. I'll probably put that on the website as well, just because, even though it's an adjunct to breathing, today's topic, there's a common theme of going back in the body and that it's a painful experience, right? Usually there's a trauma. Obviously, they've just died, right? So physically there's some sort of trauma that's happened and then they have to go back into this wounded body, right? But a lot of people will describe, even as they're going back into the body, whoever they is, right? Again, this is kind of esoteric for some people, but when they're going back into that body experience, that it's just the feeling of being compressed because we're so expansive, right? And I think that's what people love about the pineal gland meditation is that it's the opportunity to expand without body trauma.
And it's like I've seen the HeartMath image. It goes bigger and bigger. That's how I feel when I do it. Yeah. I filled up the room, and the room's big there where I teach it. Yeah. And my niece, who just gave birth, did her birth trauma work in her teenage years, so she's now 31. It was a very loving, lovely birth. She didn't even need meds. She didn't wait for the doctor because she had healed her own birth trauma.
Nice.
Interesting.
Very cool. We'll have to make that an episode sometime. So speaking of future episodes, Stephen Dynako is going to join me next week for a long discussion about his work with the business community. And so if you are in the business world and you're really interested to hear more about, okay, I can breathe in certain ways and it affects certain things, but how do I change my environment? Why do I have to constantly work? Maybe the question is, why do I have to constantly work on myself to fit into this world? Why is it all about me changing? Is there a way to make the business world change and shift in some ways? Wow. And I think Stephen has a great answer to that. And he also had the privilege of working with Barbara Marx Hubbard, who is an amazing visionary. And so we'll talk more about her, about Stephen's work in the business community next week. Also Thursday at 10 a.m. here at WVLP. Do you have anything else to say about that?
I would just say it's business community and beyond. So,
Okay.
So tying it to Barbara's work, I mean, she looked at 12 sectors of society, one of which was economics and business, but then there were things like the arts and infrastructure and spirituality. I'm looking at, if we want to say business, the business of all of these things. So don't think you have to be like an executive or a manager to show up for the show next week. It's
the
really
business of running the home, right? That's, for sure. That counts.
Of the life we're in.
It's a big deal. Yeah. And some listeners may remember that name. She has done a lot of great work on just being conscious. Yeah, Conscious Evolution is a great book title of hers. And then also some people may remember her from having run for vice president for a little while in the 80s. And giving her votes to Geraldine Ferraro. Yep. So I like to mention books here on the program. And last week I mentioned a book that's on the website. And today I would like to mention a book about breathing called Breathe, Mama, Breathe, which is an excellent book by Shonda Morales that is all kinds of quick little bites, little ways to practice what I call mini mindfulness. And Shonda has a different word for it, I think, but it's geared toward mothers living stressful lives, trying to have it all and do it all and be it all, and also not screw up our children too much. So good luck with that, tall order people. Here's a way that can help you, which is Breathe, Mama, Breathe. I'm going to put that on the Facebook page as well. This has been a wonderful episode speaking with Stephen Dynako.
Thank you.
And also Mr. Tom Dworniczek, Eli the Restorer.
Thank you, Kiki.
And I hope you guys had so much fun today, as much fun as I did. How can people reach you if they want to know more about you?
Well, if you're on Facebook, go to Eli the Restorer. That's the best way to find me.
And YouTube, right?
And YouTube, but mostly Facebook. It's taken off there.
Live videos. Yeah. What about you, Stephen?
I mean, if you just Google search my name, Stephen Dynako, Stephen Dynako. I mean, I have a website, Facebook, YouTube channel.
Love it.
Where I have a lot of meditations posted.
Good.
So there's literally close to 100.
And if you're friends with me, Kealah Parkinson, you can also come and check out my Facebook page, my business page, and also the Facebook page here for TuneIn Radio. This has been such a wonderful episode of TuneIn, radio for your mind, body, and soul, talking about don't forget to breathe. And we spent a whole hour talking about breathing, and I feel like we could have spoken for 2 more hours about breathing. Thank you so much to my guests today. Don't forget to tune in next week to hear more about work with Barbara Marks Hubbard and how that actually connects to the region. And also, don't forget to practice some breathing. All right. See you later, meditators.